Okay, I think we can maybe get started with introductions on this side, and then as people join, we will get started with the content. So maybe just to say welcome to everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jax. I think I've met a lot of you already. We run this once a month as a Founder Friday. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, thanks very much for joining us. And we will be on the mailing list. Please make sure that we get your emails if you haven't responded on the Luma invite, and we'll invite you going forward as well. Before we introduce our esteemed speaker, I just wanted to pass the mic around the room and to say for anyone joining online, please put your, if you're online and joining us on Zoom, please would you just type into the chat a little hello and who you are and what business you run. But for those who are in the room with us in Joburg, I'm going to pass the mic around and ask you very briefly just to say who you are and what business you run, or the capacity in which you're joining us today. So I'm going to start up here and let's go around.
Hi, my name is Tabang Wisi. I'm here actually in my private capacity, actually working for one of the banks in South Africa, and just here to learn and gain a little bit of knowledge. Thanks.
Afternoon, Georgiadis. Thanks for hosting us today. And I represent with my partner here, Fairgrind SA.
Hi, I'm Tabiso, and I'm with George from Fairgrind.
Hi everyone, I'm Takondwa Mwendera with 54 Collective, and I am passionate about storytelling in VC and brand building.
Hi everyone, my name is Mamudise. I'm also with 54 Collective, part of the partnerships team.
Hi everyone, my name is Alistair. I'm founder of Chikwama Pay, a neobank providing insurance, banking services, credit to underbanked and unbanked communities.
Hi everybody, my name is Maker. I'm from Chelo, which is a fundraiser and project management startup, mainly for schools.
Hi, I'm Njabulo, the co-founder of CureRoot. We are an AI-powered drug discovery platform finding new medications from African plants.
Hi, everyone. I am Dinao. I'm a brand strategist and creative director, and I help brands grow through pretty privilege.
Okay, I hope I have pretty privilege, but I'm happy I'm sitting next to you. I am Berry Shava. I'm the founder of Green Design, 2X founder. Now I want to be a 3 times founder, where we de-risk property development for affordable housing with the 42 million affordable housing deficit in Africa. So de-risking it for property developers.
Hello, everyone. My name is Winston Reed. I'm the founder of a company called Alvin Technologies, and we do embedded open banking software for asset managers and banks.
Thanks so much, everyone. And I see we have Bongs, our CEO, has joined us. I'm just going to ask him to say hello for a minute.
Hi, my name is Bongane. I'm the CEO of 54 Collective. So really good to be here. And thanks for coming through.
Thanks, Bongs. Okay, and for those who joined while we're doing introductions, if you've joined online, please won't you just say hi on the chat and what company you're with. And I need to put my glasses on to see. I see a bunch of bots have joined us as well. And hi to Veronica from Health Center, Fawaz from Carbon, and we've got a few bots that are joining us as well. But thanks. I see Andrew's online from Pesa.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Hey, Sean. And a bunch of you, please introduce yourselves on the chat, but lovely to have our founders from around the continent and abroad online with us as well. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce you to Steve Waidelich, our head of growth, who is a superpower in our businesses, in our business around focusing on the things that matter, measuring what counts in your business, and driving growth from a point of data and following the data and the evidence that you have in your business. So Steve has championed so many initiatives in this business around measuring the right things, focusing growth effort on. If you could maybe just mute yourselves if you're online, thank you. So really powering the scale that you bring to your business from a point of validation, evidence, and real data. And Steve has a very interesting talk that I'm really glad to be able to introduce you to, because I've seen this talk before. And so very happy that Steve's agreed to share it, and is also up in Joburg from Cape Town for the day to be able to do this in person. So thank you, Steve, and over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Jax. Hey, everyone. This is my first Founder Friday in person. Just love the energy, love the vibe, love having all you guys here in the space, and pretty good lunch as well. I'm normally picking something out of my leftovers out of my fridge on a Friday for lunch, so that was a nice change. Good to be up here in person with the 54 Co team and all of you, as well as the guys online. I think maybe just a caveat around this session, which I think Jax alluded to in the meeting invite as well, which is that the session is predominantly and was created for businesses that are slightly more mature, still early stage, but certainly slightly further along in their maturity curve. They may have a product in market already. They may have some customers already. You may have those customers even paying you and generating some revenue through the business. So there is already some kind of progress and traction. And that's when a North Star metric makes way more sense and suddenly becomes a really powerful tool in helping you scale and best accelerate the growth that you've already created. If you're earlier on in your journey and you're still kind of validating parts or components of your business, this is still a very useful session, and many of the principles will serve you really well because you kind of have this view into the future and this lens of what may be important down the line. And that, as we've learned from other founders, is a great kind of leading indicator of things that they should be considering as they build at early stage.
Steve, just one point of housekeeping. Would you like to take questions as you go, or would you like people to add them to the chat and we'll tackle?
Thanks. There's quite a bit of content to get through, quite a few. It might feel like a little bit of a whirlwind, but I do want to kind of get through more of the theoretical stuff and get to more of the practical application stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say questions, but definitely like...
Let's add them in the chat.
Maybe
add them in the chat and we'll tackle them at the end.
Yeah, but also throw your hand up if there's something that really is pressing. Happy to have a conversation. But I do want to save a ton of time at the end for Q&A and discussion and kind of workshopping, if you will.
Perfect.
Okay, cool. So Jack spoke a little bit about me. I'm head of growth here at 54 Collective. Before 54 Co, I built a digital media agency and scaled the business to one of the biggest digital media agencies on the continent, got it to a $40 million valuation, and then we exited to Publicis, a French advertising group, back in 2014. Since then, I've been focused on advising early stage founders on building early versions of their product, helping them get their first few customers, and helping them build the right foundations for building a scalable business. In terms of what we're going to cover in today's session, we're going to basically walk through a little bit of a playbook of how you can think about developing a North Star metric for your business. We'll go through a couple of things. The first thing we'll start with is kind of a principle things around the 3 games of product, and we'll unpack different versions of those. Then we'll look a little bit around the components of a North Star metric. We'll talk about some examples and some use cases of other businesses that we're probably familiar with, how they came up with the North Star. And then we'll get into the kind of the actionable, applicable stuff that you can execute in your team around the input metrics into your North Star, how you can kind of deploy teams around those input metrics to help you generate kind of progress and scale. And then, as I said, tons of time for Q&A at the end and discussion. Cool. Just before we get into the North Star stuff, I think a couple of really important principles to set as a foundation here. The first is that the barriers to entry for new products in today's world are extremely low, right? There are thousands of products being launched pretty much every day, right? So to be able to compete in this highly saturated, highly competitive space, having an exceptional product with brilliant customer experience and customer value is what helps you win, right? And product-led companies are the ones that are emerging as winners, right? The companies building exceptional products that create tons of value for their customers are the ones who emerge and win. And so linked to that, it's probably important to understand, what does it mean to be product-led, right? And essentially what it means is you start with kind of the product team, or the founder or the business starts with the product vision, or a vision of how you solve a pain for a customer pain. And I think the part about, or the principle about being product-led is how that product vision then translates to some kind of commercial outcome, right? Some kind of revenue generation, or for investors, shareholder value. And really that kind of gray line between your vision and your product, your product and your product vision is really the product strategy, which links the vision to that commercial outcome. So it's just some important principles around being product-led and what it means to be product-led. A really good example of this is Amazon, and Jeff Bezos, I think it was back in like 2018 or 2017, he had this quote. He said, "Amazon's financial performance for the next few quarters is already sealed, right? It's already locked in. The investments we are making in product right now will drive how we perform for the next 2 years." So he's already got the confidence that the financial performance of the business, those commercial outcomes we're talking about, are already secure in his business. And he's saying he's confident because we've made, because of the product changes or the product implementations that we've made now, that he's confident that in the future that they will deliver financial outcomes for the business. So how is it that he can be so confident around that, right? And it turns out that was very closely, if not directly, linked to the principle of applying a North Star metric. And essentially what the North Star metric is kind of this kind of fabric between what the product team is doing and the customer value that's seen by the product team, all the things that they're doing in the product. And it's that connective tissue between that and what the founder actually cares about, right? The impact that the founder or CEO cares about. Essentially, the North Star metric is a leading indicator of the future success of your product work. Leading indicator of the future success of your product work. Links very closely to that Bezos quote. Just a couple of notes on revenue. We get quite a few questions around like product teams or head of products going, "My CEO and founder says the only metric that matters for the business is revenue. And so our North Star metric should be revenue. He doesn't care what I say," right? Or she doesn't care what I say. Just a couple of notes on why revenue doesn't make a very good North Star metric. And there are really three components to it. The first is that revenue is typically a view of what has happened in the past, has happened historically, right? So if you get to the point and you start to see your revenue drop off, there's a good chance that almost certainly you have missed the opportunity to correct that, right? There's nothing you can do about that now. And so revenue is ultimately a lagging indicator. The second is that there are often many external influences on revenue. So from a product perspective, sometimes like a marketing campaign can suddenly lead to the spike in revenue. And that gives you kind of false positive around what's actually driving that customer value, what's actually delivering the value to customers and generating that commercial outcome for the business. The third component of it is that it's actually quite a bad indicator of customer value. It's not a bad indicator of customer value. It's just not an ideal indicator of customer value. So if you think about it, I'm sure all of us have got like this subscription to some product that we've kind of just left on and left it there and like forgotten about it and still get charged every month the $4 or whatever it might be. And eventually you go, okay, well, I'm not using this product, I'm getting no value out of it, and I'll cancel my subscription. But if you think about that business is recording the revenue, right? The revenue's coming in, they're going, well, Steve's paying for this product, he must be enjoying our services and getting value from it. But so like revenue is not a great indicator of the value that you're creating for your customers. So that's just a couple of principles of why revenue makes a bad North Star metric. And we'll get into what does make a good North Star metric. But maybe some things to think about first is like, how should I think about, or how should you think about as a founder, how to go about creating or developing your North Star metric? The first thing to do is to start thinking about something we call games, which is really thinking about the possible outcomes, the interactions and trade-offs you need to make, and that are required in your product to get to certain outcomes or results. And essentially, you could almost group, or you can almost assign any product in the world aside from some very kind of out there outlier products to one of these three games. The first is the attention game, the second is the transaction game, and the third is the productivity game. And in almost every business, you can define what game you're playing in your product. Are you playing attention, transaction, or productivity game? Often get founders saying, Steve, we're actually playing two games. And 95% of the time, you just kind of need to think about it a little deeper around the actual value that you're creating or the product is creating. And you'll determine that really it comes down to a single game that you're playing in the product. So let's unpack a couple of these games and see what we mean by this. The first is the attention game, right? And the attention game is associated with businesses or products like video streaming services or social media products, right? If you think about it, these products are all about the amount of time that their customers spend with the product. So, it's the time spent streaming videos. You might look at this and go, isn't there something related to active usage? And why aren't they measuring monthly active users or daily active users? And what's quite interesting is that daily active usage actually is a bit of a vanity metric for a business like this, because just going into Netflix and browsing a few shows, maybe watching the first 20 minutes of one, doesn't actually deliver customer value, right? The real indicator of customer value is if you're sitting there streaming more than 60 hours of video per month, right? That's the real indicator that you're getting immense value out of the product. That's a much better leading indicator that you will continue to pay your subscription and that Netflix will retain your business over many years. And so it's a good leading indicator of revenue for their business. Interestingly as well, Facebook spent a ton of time on moving away from daily active usage and more into how to generate deep engagement with the newsfeed. So they worked on their algorithms and all sorts of kind of inputs to get more of the users becoming literally all consumed by the newsfeed, whether it was liking inputs or similar interests or friends content. They spend a ton of time just generating engagement with that newsfeed as a leading indicator of you spending more time on the platform and an ability for them to serve you more ads. Like if they were just measuring the number of clicks you placed on ads, they generate the revenue out of it, but like it wouldn't be a real indicator of the value you're getting from the platform, and it wouldn't necessarily keep you on the platform and allow them to generate long-term kind of sustainable revenue growth. The next game is the transaction game. Probably you associate these kind of businesses and business models and products with a transaction game. And that's really like online retailers, right? E-commerce merchants like Jumia, Takealot, Amazon, and even like an insurance product like Naked Insurance. It's really about like a once-off transaction or even a one-sided transaction in some circumstances. Even something like a TurboTax, American product, but basically you're submitting your tax returns once a year. It's a single transaction that happens once a year. Ultimately, what it comes down to with these businesses is like the volume or the number of transactions that these products are able to process over a specific period of time. An interesting thing to think about when it comes to the transaction game is you can have a business like Amazon and Jumia essentially are operating in exactly the same industry. They're essentially exactly the same products, but have very different North Star metrics, right? So a business like Amazon, for example, prides themselves in their Prime subscription, right? And their Prime subscription is all about bundling in their other services, their video streaming, etc. And so for Amazon, they have a totally different North Star metric to Jumia, who is kind of more focused on just the once-off interaction or just the number of purchases that are happening on their platform. So you can have two businesses in the same product with very different North Star metrics because their product strategy and their product vision are quite different. It's an important principle that we'll cover a little bit later as well. And the last game is productivity. It's essentially like how can you help very often businesses or even people basically improve their efficiency, right? Do their job easier. And so I think a good example here is like Asana, project management tool. And for them, as a North Star metric or a measure of customer value, you would think that maybe they just focus on the number of tasks that get created in Asana. But actually that's a couple of steps short of real customer value, because what they really want to be tracking is not just the number of tasks created, but they want to see whether you then took those tasks, went off and did the work that you had tasked yourself with, and then came back and checked the task as complete. And so they actually want to be measuring the number of tasks completed, because that is true customer value. That's when they know that the customer has actually done what they want the product to do and come back and done it. And that's the best indicator of customer value. Yeah, and obviously things like analytics tools and Slacks and workplace communication tools, very similar kind of principles around productivity.
Steve, I have a quick question, please.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Go.
Yeah, this is, I mean, speaking from Tunisia, like I'm managing a payment gateway called Connect. Like what you said about the North Star of Jumia and Amazon was interesting, since it's pretty much the same business, but like not measuring it in the same way. Could we have like a North Star in the step that we are in right now? And this North Star can actually change once we have reached the target, meaning like maybe at the beginning, like we look for traction, and then we look at the performance rather than traction itself.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the interesting thing that we've learned around North Star metrics is they do sometimes change and often will change with the maturity of your business. And so because they're associated with the product strategy, the core customer might change over time. And so because your core customer changes, that will change what your North Star metric is. Yes is the answer to your question. If I think I got it. It does evolve. It can evolve, and it can change over time if your product or your product vision or your strategy changes, or your customer set changes quite dramatically.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. So the kind of, yeah, go for it. Sure, just grab the mic.
Just to dovetail off of what he was asking as well, when it came to the Jumia versus Amazon example, can you expound a bit more as to how their actual like day-to-day focus mechanisms are different? Because my perception would be that, say, if I was a product manager at Amazon, even if my ultimate indicator that I'm focused on is annual renewals of Prime memberships, if the North Star metric otherwise is focusing on Prime activity, and I'm not looking at once-off transactions, then I'm otherwise looking at a lagging indicator that would take a year to show the benefit of. Like I'm doing work today to see are these new products I'm coming out with, are these going to encourage people to return to their Prime membership for the next year? But day to day, whether I'm at Jumia or I'm at Amazon, I'm still focused on once-off transactions in order to confirm that the product is delivering value.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm going to come to a part of the session where we cover exactly that. It comes down to the input metrics. So it's not just about the North Star, but the input metrics that drive the North Star. If I don't answer your question, let's chat at the end and we'll kind of revisit that. So just to come back to, and I alluded to a couple of them in those games that we were talking about, but the three really important components of any effective North Star metric is that A, they measure customer value. So actually delivering what the real value delivered to the customer is. They're aligned with your product vision. And so they are often a good indicator of the success of your product vision and can be a measure of the success of your product vision or strategy. It's not the vice versa, right? And the last is that it's a leading indicator of revenue, so that you are confident that if your customers are taking these actions and your North Star metric is moving up and to the right, you can expect your revenue to follow. So just to wrap up in terms of a definition, the North Star metric is a leading indicator of sustainable growth. It acts as a connective tissue between the product and the broader business and the it expresses value, represents vision and strategy, is a leading indicator. It isn't a vanity metric. So vanity metric is something that makes you feel good, makes it feel like the business is going well, but actually doesn't deliver any commercial outcomes. It's actionable. So there's actions you can take out of it, teams that you can deploy to move the needle on those metrics. It can be easily understood and is quantifiable. So let's just take a little bit of a practical application to this and use a product that I imagine many of us are very familiar with, if not using it on a daily or weekly basis. The product is Spotify. And if we think about Daniel Ek, the CEO of Spotify, if we ask the question, what does the Spotify CEO Daniel Ek care about? Like what keeps him up at night? What is he accountable for? It's ultimately revenue, right? We think about Spotify. The question to be asking is, how does revenue translate into a North Star metric for a product? Spotify is obviously a listed entity, so we have all the information on what the components of Spotify's revenue are and what the makeup of that revenue is. Again, there's no trade secrets here. It's all like available in their IPO docs or the financial performance reports. Basically, Spotify makes 90% of its revenue through premium subscribers and just 10% through free users. If you dig a little bit more into their reports and some of the data, you can see there that premium subscribers spend 75 hours per month basically streaming music through the platform versus just 24 hours. So already you can start to see some kind of signals of where, what kind of metric you could associate with Spotify as a business. Some kind of idea of where they generate revenue from and which customers are getting most value out of the platform. So I think it's a good point to kind of just pause and maybe the guys online can just pop it in the chat. Any ideas on what Spotify's North Star metric would be? And just anyone in the audience can put their hands up, but maybe give the guys online a couple of minutes just to pop into the chat. What do you think a good North Star metric for Spotify would be?
Any cases?
Okay, based on your slides, I think it would highly be driven by attention. And the reason I'm saying this is because of how sometimes these platforms can anticipate the next song you're going to play and it's, or when you get on the platform, it's like, do I always need to listen to these songs? Because, it's like it customizes the dashboard or your landing page. So I think it grabs your attention, and that's probably maybe its main.
Yeah, spot on. Definitely playing the attention game. Any other guesses? Couple online. Time listening, also very good.
I wonder if it isn't the content creators as well. So seeing how many new content creators can come on, start on Spotify, it's the cheapest, entry for them, and then maybe the transactions that come from that. So you get more and more artists going on Spotify instead of
That's really
going to
interesting.
good old CD or
Yep.
something like that. I don't
It's
know.
very smart.
I
Yeah,
don't-
because we'll get into it because very much aligned with their product vision, right? So the artists are a big part of that product vision and strategy.
Yeah, and I think just the better content creators, the more subscribers.
Yep. Time listening, songs played, also very good. What was one more?
If I were to look at it as a proper OKR, as might happen, I'd probably say you'd look at the growth of premium subscribers, since that's where most of your revenue comes from.
Yep.
Yeah.
All very good answers. Either the preceding slides were very good, or you guys have been doing your homework. But ultimately, this is what it comes down to. Spotify's North Star metric: time spent by subscribers listening to music, right? So the important components of it is, firstly, they make 90% of their revenue from their subscribers. And so if we just do our little checklist of the components of a North Star metric, does it measure customer value? So the amount of time that they're spending in the app listening to music is the real value that customers get out of the product. Is it aligned with the product vision? And that was an important point earlier. It's easy to go and Google what Spotify's vision for the business is and their product vision. Ultimately, it comes down to them being able to have artists create content and get paid for the content that they create. And so the way they do that is by having songs on the platform, and the way they link that to customers is that the more time customers spent in the app listening to music, the more those artists get paid, right? And then the last component, is it a leading indicator of revenue? Well, we saw absolutely. If you're a premium subscriber to Spotify and you're spending a lot of time listening to music, you are part of that 90% of where Spotify's revenue comes from. Any questions? I'll pause there. Any questions about the Spotify example? Cool. So the next part is probably the most important part of the session, and is a leading indicator of how you can apply this principle into your business. I call this the product analytics formula, and essentially it's the input metrics to your North Star, right? And so it's the variables in a formulaic terminology. It's the variables that contribute to your North Star metric. And it consists of, the first is breadth, right? Which is essentially comes down to reach. It's how many users, how many customers are using your platform, how many active returning users are taking this action. The second is depth. It's all about the kind of depth of usage. And when it comes to Spotify, how many hours are they listening? How many songs, how many hours are they spending listening on the platform? The next is frequency, is like how often are they listening to that volume of song or that length of time? How often does each user engage? And the last variable is an efficiency variable. Not all businesses have this efficiency variable. You can associate this to things like a grocery delivery service or a food delivery service, where they might look at the time or the number of deliveries that were made under a certain time, right? How efficiently are you able to deliver this value to your customer? It's not always prevalent in every business, but it essentially comes down to how fast do they succeed. So when we look at this from Spotify's perspective, and we look at their North Star metric, time spent by subscribers listening to music, we can now break it down by the input metrics, right? So let's look at breadth first. So some of the metrics we could, or measures, the things that we could measure would include things like trial users, because before you become a premium subscriber, you may start a trial version of it, and we want to measure how many of those trial users are signing up for the trial. And then obviously the total number of actual premium subscribers would be a key measure under the breadth variable. And you could think about a metric that you could use to measure these things, which is to improve new user conversion, right, from the breadth perspective. So new user conversion into trial users and then on to premium subscribers. From the depth perspective, it's all about the depth of the engagement. So how many hours are they spending engaging on Spotify? And a metric might be, or a measure might be, how many hours per session, right? So per session on Spotify, how many hours is a user spending? And a metric to measure that might be how how could you increase the time spent per session? And then from a frequency perspective, it's about the number of sessions per week or even per day. And a measure would be, or a metric to measure would be, how do you bring users back more often, right? I think the most important part now is when you overlay product initiatives over this, right? So now you've got your North Star metric of time spent by subscribers listening to music. You've broken it down by the inputs, by breadth, depth, and frequency. And now how do you assign like product initiatives to each of the input metrics? An important principle here is often with the North Star metric, one experiment isn't actually going to move the needle on your North Star, right? And we've seen tons of founders get super frustrated because they've got a North Star metric and the whole company or the whole team is out there trying to do a bunch of stuff, but you're just not actually seeing it move the needle on the North Star metric. Suddenly, when you break it down into the input measures, you've got a much more tangible indicator of what your teams are doing, what the product team is doing. Does it actually make a difference or move the needle on those input metrics? And so overlaying product initiatives on the bottom there gives you a good idea of how you can deploy groups of teams or teams under individual input metrics and say, like, your goal is to improve new user conversion, right? And some of the initiatives might be, let's improve a new sign-up flow. Let's launch something like premium trials where you could get a trial of the premium version. You might look at product optimizations in converting trials to a full-time subscription. And you might look at the payment system or the payment infrastructure or the card processing or payment processing functionality within your product. When it comes to increasing time spent per session, the biggest thing here is recommendations when it comes down to Spotify, right? If you think about it, you're listening to that song on Spotify, you get to the end of the song and the song ends. You want the next recommendation or the recommendation of the next song to be that good that you keep listening, right? You don't just close it up and go, great, song done. So from a product perspective, the product team are optimizing around their algorithm, right? Their recommendations algorithm to play you a song that is likely to keep you listening. And that's a very direct pointed product optimization improvement that the team could work on to increase the time spent per session. And you guys will be familiar with this. I certainly am. Like I like a certain artist and I listen to the radio and I can just spend 4 hours just listening to that artist alone or other similar artists. And you can see why Spotify generates these kind of features, right? And how that actually increases the time I spend per session or we spend per session. The last is frequency. So how do you get users to come back more often? And some product initiatives or features that might work there. You see a ton of these things, but there was a recent announcement of, I'm an Oasis fan, announcement of Oasis getting back together. You get the announcement to go, here, we've got a whole radio station for Oasis. And I jumped straight back into Spotify and it was immediately like, that's a great way to get me back into the app. And you see a ton of their stuff, right? There's like daily mix playlists. There's even things like built into the algorithm is they start to work out. They start to know when you're working out, right? And they give you a workout mix. All these tools and tactics and tricks to get you back into the app, to get you back more often, streaming more regularly. So you can see how applying these kind of product initiatives drive the metrics layer above that drive the breadth, depth, and frequency measures that in turn ladder up to your North Star metric. And you kind of see it happening every day in your Spotify app, and you have no idea that me creating radio stations or listening to these stations is actually contributing directly to Spotify's revenue, right? And all as a result of product initiatives that the team have thought about and sat down and said, you know, this is what we're going to do to improve just our number of trial users or just premium subscribers, or we're just going to work on hours per session. It's a very actionable tactic so that you can generate incremental gains on those input measures that then compound to grow your North Star metric. And really this is the most powerful principle of a North Star metric, is to actually break it down by its input metrics. And that's where you're going to get real results. We see so many founders slip up by kind of getting in a bit of a panic and a spin about some revenue targets they need to hit. They've got to hit $10,000 in revenue next month because some investors breathing down their neck. and they get the whole company in the room and they go, right, guys, let's sit down and go, who's got an idea about how we grow revenue? Who's got an idea about how we're going to get to $10,000 in revenue, right? And you've got a bunch of different ideas and random things, rather than break them up into their inputs, components of a product team that knows exactly, or a growth marketing team that knows exactly how to get more new signups, and then how to get the product team to optimize the payment system to get more of those trial users to upgrade to the premium subscription. So you can be much more pointed and much more precise with the activities that the whole company is doing, and you can be confident that's going to ladder up to the revenue at some point down the line. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Steve, I have a quick question.
Go for it.
Does it mean finding your North Star could it mean that you can create your own KPI, like a mix of several other KPIs, and track this specific KPI?
I'm on a call up. I can't hear you.
Sorry?
Bong's just mute. Bong's
Oh,
just
sorry.
mute.
Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah.
Sorry, just maybe just repeat the question again.
Yeah, I was saying that finding your North Star, could it mean that you can build your own KPI, like your own specific KPI that could be a mix of several other KPIs and track it? And if yes, does it couldn't that be risky? I mean, it makes complete sense if it's a new business model that you're creating. But if it's an existing business model, maybe there is no need to create like a new KPI. Yeah.
I think the important principle to that is like the input metrics might be very different, and some businesses may not always have a breadth and a depth measure or variable. Certainly many businesses don't have an efficiency variable. And so it's very much down to your business and your understanding of what you've built that'll determine that. So I think I'm answering your question saying, yes, it can be very different by each business, and it's all determined by what are the input metrics that are important to you. I think the most important part is this: if you have a North Star metric, these are the principles that cannot change, that will always be consistent and true, right? The first is that it must measure customer value. It must be aligned with your product vision, and it must be a leading indicator of revenue. If it doesn't fit one of those, you can be pretty sure that it's probably not a very effective North Star metric. I think you had something in there like, if you have an existing business model, do you need to change it? If it doesn't meet one of these three criteria, then you do need to change it. But maybe some of those existing metrics are the ones that form part of the input metrics that we went through, the input formula, the breadth, depth, frequency, and efficiency measure. Those are potentially some already existing measures or metrics that you're measuring in your business that ladder up to your North Star metric, which I think answers your question. If I haven't, we can revisit it at the end of the session.
No, it's very clear. Thank you. I would love to discuss fintech with you actually at some point.
Great. We'll do that after the
Quick
session.
question.
Yeah, go for it.
On this side. Yeah, there you go. I sound like I'm on Zoom. If you could please go to the slide before, because I just want to, it was the one where you have the definitions of breadth, depth, frequency, and efficiency. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to understand. So with breadth is, sorry, I get it, it's fine.
Okay.
Because the thing is, I don't have mine, like, are we going to get a copy of the slides? Maybe that's the question I'm trying to ask. Or can I take a photo of this one?
Up to you. Yeah, we'll circulate the deck afterwards.
Yeah. We probably should have cleared that up right from the beginning.
Yeah.
But yes, you'll definitely get the deck, and you can read. Okay. Cool.
And Steve, just a question here from Tvang.
Cool.
Hi, Steve. So I look at this and I just want to qualify it, right? When we look at this is just call it the context of the product in growth mode. So how to understand the metrics with regards to growing the product, right? But now when you're faced in a situation where you are defending, so you've grown the product, but now you are in a situation where you've got somebody who's trying to take market share from you, does this formula still apply? Or do we literally look at this formula and like have totally different metrics completely? Because now you're defending, you're not necessarily trying to grow,
I think there is quite a bit of context that is embedded in that question. I think we need to clarify like what defending means, but ultimately the North Star metric is your ultimate leading indicator or measure of your ability, your business's ability to generate revenue. If you can generate more revenue than your competitors, you can probably defend the space that you're in. If you can get more of your listeners to listen for longer and stay subscribed to your business, you can probably defend their subscription rather than switching to another product. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your defend question, but I think there's potentially some context missing from that. But I would say that whether you are defending or growing the business, this formula, this approach and methodology helps you develop a kind of platform for understanding the long-term scalability and viability of the business.
Cool. No, I think I'm just looking at it like, let's say if you have enjoyed market share or 100%, let's say, or for example, and now you literally have the first piece of competition trying to gain market share from you. That's the context I was trying to give, is to say, in a situation where you've always used this formula to measure the growth, and then now you're in a situation where you're facing competition, what applies then?
Okay, we're getting quite specific, but I think I kind of see where you're going with this, and like maybe there's someone who's got competition for a streaming service that I don't know has got quieter artists, and you don't have that on your platform, and maybe that's a feature that you should consider, or you should consider including in your algorithm that you should probably include local tastes into the algorithm, which is exactly what Spotify did, right? And so you noticed you have a South Africa playlist. So yes, maybe the competitors launched a feature that potentially can pull customers away from your business. This will help you go, well, this is the feature that we need to double down on then. And if we do that, is it going to improve the number of hours per session or increase the time spent per session?
Yeah, so it stays pretty much consistent. Yeah?
Correct.
I think that's a good question. And I just wanted to maybe clarify something or add to what he was saying. I think the North Star formula is constant, and it's true. And the context of whether you want to, you are defending, you are mature, you want to defend, boils down to your business model. And at what points do you pivot as well, and I think the business model is the context to the formula, because you can't be big enough not to fail, if you get what I'm saying. We have cases of, companies who were big and they failed because of the context that adds to this, I think. But it's a business model, I think, is highly connected to this formula, I think.
Yep, that's a good point. Cool. I'm going to just pause there and just wrap up with a summary, and then we'll come back to more questions. So what are the big takeaways from today? The first is, if you're thinking about defining a North Star metric, start by defining the game you're playing, right? Are you playing the attention, transaction, or productivity game? And if you think you're playing both, take another deeper dive into it and really try to understand what the customer value is that you're creating. And then ultimately it comes down to picking one of those games. The second is that the North Star metric should measure customer value, align with product strategy, and be a leading indicator of revenue. The next is that you should break down your North Star metric into actionable input metrics from a breadth, depth, frequency, and efficiency perspective. And the last is that you should deploy groups of people or teams within your company against these different inputs. And you can even use the inputs to inspire like friendly competition amongst team or incentivize them, right? So those are the key kind of takeaways from today's session and all the principles in them. If there are any more questions, I don't know how we're doing on time, Jack.
We're doing well. We've got about 10 minutes left, so there's good time for questions. Let's go to.
Thanks for this, Steve. I think you set context at the beginning saying this is more for a company probably a bit further on in their growth journey. There's always that like strange moments in a business where you can see you're heading close to product market fit, but you're not quite there. Do you have any general tips with what to look out for in implementing this model relative to where the company is to whatever product market fit is in that context?
Yeah, I think there's 2 points. It's a good question. And I imagine there's some businesses in here who are slightly earlier in their journey that are asking themselves how to practically apply this. And I mentioned the caveat right at the beginning is that if you're early in your product and you haven't yet worked out exactly who your ideal customers are or what the value proposition is that resonates with them, or how you're going to charge those customers for your services, your product, like just adding a North Star metric into your business is going to serve as a distraction. It's going to, like, you've got to actually work out what your product vision and your strategy is. Just throwing a North Star metric on top of it doesn't solve that stuff, right? And I've seen a ton of founders just go, I'm not growing, it's not working, I just need a North Star metric. And as soon as I got a North Star metric, everything's just going to fall into place. It's a massive trap and a huge time waste because as you've seen from the principles, if you don't have the vision right, if you aren't actually creating customer value and work what that out is, like just having a North Star metric doesn't actually add to any of that. I'm not sure you had a second question, part of the question.
I think you've answered it.
Okay.
You've answered it, yeah.
I'd like to open up to 54 Code team as well. Any questions from anyone on the call or in the room? Any questions for Steve? Okay.
So I am a brand strategist. I work primarily with direct-to-consumer lifestyle brands. I'm wondering if this can be applied in that context where sometimes people start lifestyle businesses and they focus just on, we need to sell this product, versus making that North Star a behavioral change within the target demographic. So for example, I'm working with a West African food brand that's productizing and modernizing traditional African cooking, which takes forever. So just like what Asians have done with noodles and everything is accessible, they're making West African cooking accessible. But the founders are so on, we just need to sell the product. And I'm wondering, could this be applied to get people to cook more? Because if there's more people cooking versus ordering off DoorDash and Uber, then your product just becomes a natural solution within that whole thing. So am I understanding this North Star concept right?
I'm not sure. It's a very specific question. And I think one of the hardest questions to field here is like, this is my business. What should my North Star metric be, Steve? I don't know your business. I don't know your customers. I don't know your product. I don't know enough about that to give you a smart answer for that. So I tend to try and avoid going, I think this should be your North Star metric, is the first part of that. But have you understood the North Star metric principle? I think so. Maybe we should sit down and chat, and maybe you can ask me some more questions and unpack a little bit more. I think one important principle is, like, in order to make a North Star metric work for you, one of the huge steps or infrastructure steps that need to be in place is that you can measure how your customers are using your product. Like, if you're flying blind and you don't actually know how many people are buying products, how often they're buying products, how often they come back and search, whether they've left products in their shopping cart. If you aren't able to measure those breadcrumbs within your product, it makes having a North Star metric quite tricky, right? So that doesn't mean you're discounting all offline products, right? But it does mean that having a digitally enabled product does make the North Star metric more powerful. So I don't know if that doesn't answer your question, but I hope that...
No, I think I understand. Obviously, I haven't now shared the whole entire brand and you don't have that background, but I'm understanding that North Star is about user behavior, usually.
Yes.
Related to whatever we're offering.
Yes. User behavior, and also just about being a very data-orientated, digitally minded, performance minded business, right? And the moment you start thinking about that and breaking up revenue into its leading indicators and breaking up the leading indicator into its input metrics, suddenly you become a totally different organization. You become a data-driven organization. Some of the things we see anecdotally is like, I'll talk to a founder and she'll be like, yeah, my growth team is super busy. And you go and talk to the head of growth, it's like, how's it going? How was this week? Oh, can't believe how busy we were this week. And as a founder who has a breakdown of their input metrics and a Google sheet that goes, so, oh, you've had a crazy busy week. How many trial subscriptions did you get? What was the conversion rate this week, right? So you say you're super busy, but like, doesn't seem to translate, all that busyness isn't translating into the leading indicators of what actually matters to me as the founder, which is revenue. So it's a great way. Someone talked about OKRs earlier, and a great thing that I've found is like, is to use the input metrics as your OKRs, right? So you might have OKRs, monthly OKRs of improve new user conversion. And you could say to the growth team, like, this is your OKR for this month or this quarter. Increased time spent per session for the product team. This is your OKR for this quarter. And then you can have very actionable, measurable things that team can be working on. So in terms of like accountability and output and performance, it really helps teams be, just highly proficient teams, which is a very powerful, incredibly powerful principle to have within your team.
Yeah, indeed. Steve, just in the last couple of minutes, I see there's no more questions online. Maybe let me just ask anyone online who'd like to jump in with a question. While you're thinking about that, I wonder, Steve, if you would speak a little bit about what the indicators are that you are ready to think about a North Star metric. You spoke a bit about, your product strategy well, and we've spoken about product market fit. Would you just speak to that? What are those indicators that you're ready for this stage?
Yeah, again, it's very business specific. So it's difficult to group those meaningfully. But some of the most effective indicators that I've seen is, or that we see is like your product is getting repeat usage from customers. Like you have a few customers, and those few customers are coming to make a couple of bookings or book a telemedicine session, and not just one, but like more than one. You may even see them coming to do 2 sessions per month. Once you're starting to see that kind of repeat usage from customers, it's a really good signal that you've created something of value, right? You've got some kind of customer value built into your product that somebody is willing to come back, make a repeat purchase, or just use it again repeatedly. That's a very good first signal of whether you're ready to start thinking about a North Star metric. The second is that you're generating revenue, that value is turning into value capture for your business, right? That you've built something of so much value or of enough value that people are going to do it repeatedly, and they're happy to pay you repeatedly. And so indicators that you're starting to generate some revenue, people are paying you, they're paying their subscriptions, and then retention is always important, right? Like, are they coming back month after month to pay their subscription is another good indicator. So it's kind of like those product market fit metrics, which is another session entirely.
Yeah.
But those are very good leading indicators of whether you've got to the point where you can start going, right, I think we need one measure, one metric that we can align the whole company around that's going to be the leading indicator for revenue.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we've got a minute left. One last call for questions.
Just wanted to ask, I saw the first slide had, call it 4 input points for the formula, right? Does that mean that you can almost, it's malleable, like you can play around with the formula, like take out breadth, focus on depth, so depending on where, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. As I said, like we have this frequency variable.
Yeah.
Sorry, efficiency variable,
yeah.
right? And you can understand for a food delivery business, for Checker 6060, like how many of our active customers receive orders in less than 60 minutes. And an efficiency measure would be a very important input metric to Checkers' North Star metric. So you can understand how they might have an efficiency metric, but Naked Insurance doesn't need an efficiency metric. Maybe they do in terms of claims process time, but that's, a little bit too much. But yeah, your question is, can you kind of, is this formula malleable? And the answer is very much so. And so you will work out the drivers of value for your business. And as we said, like an insurance business, depth is going to play very little role in an insurance business, right? You're not trying to get your customers to engage with the platform. Like you want to get in, find the product you need insured, pay for the insurance policy, make sure they pay every month, but like you're not there engaging and spending time in the product. So they'd be dominant on like breadth, right? And they might not even have a depth variable.
Okay.
They might have frequency, like how do we make sure that they pay their insurance premium every month? And do we have notifications to say pay now? Things like funeral insurance, they need reminders, or customers need reminders to pay their policies each month. So maybe there's something around frequency. But yes, to your answer, this formula is malleable. It's different for every business. You need to take the time to work out what are the important input metrics to your North Star, and then come up with the best combination of those things.
Okay, I think we will end there. Thank you, Steve. That was really as useful and memorable as I recall it from the first time round. Thanks for sharing it with us again. And thanks to everyone who participated, the questions you asked, and enriched the conversation with that. As Steve mentioned, we will be sharing the slides. If you'd like them, please do holler. And we're going to wrap up for those in Joburg with a group photo, which is our tradition at the end of Founder Friday. So we're going to do that near the window. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Steve, thank you for being in Joburg and sharing this amazing content with us. And please do reach out to Steve, anyone who wants a follow-up conversation, that fintech talk that is coming your way. Please do reach out if you've got any more to discuss with us on this. So thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone online. Have a good weekend.